What if I told you that history's deadliest invention was not a sword, not a bomb, and not even a weapon of steel? What if it was something far more terrifying, something that could outlast empires, bend humanity to its will, and whisper across centuries, waiting for the right moment to awaken? This is not just the story of an invention. It is the story of fear, silence, and power so great it reshaped the very heartbeat of the earth. Stay with me until the end, because once you hear what was unleashed, you will never look at history the same way again. And before we dive in, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the stories that the world tries to forget. What is history's deadliest invention? The air was thick with smoke. A dull rumble shook the ground beneath their boots. The soldier lifted his head, ears ringing from the blast. Around him, the once lush valley was nothing but a charred wasteland. Trees had been ripped from the earth. Rivers boiled into steam. And silence, an awful, suffocating silence, settled over the dead. This was no ordinary weapon. It was an invention so devastating it turned life itself into ash. The soldier's throat was dry, his lips cracked, as he struggled to breathe through the burning air. The metallic taste of blood lingered on his tongue. He stumbled forward, his boots crunching over shattered glass and scorched stone. Every step echoed in the hollow ruins, as if the earth itself mourned. His eyes caught movement, shadows twitching in the smoke. Not soldiers, not survivors, just the remnants of what had been alive, now twisted beyond recognition. Fear pressed against his chest, heavy as iron chains. He realized that this invention was not made for victory. It was made for annihilation, and the world had unleashed it. The horror was not in the explosion itself, but in the silence that followed. The silence of a world stripped bare. And in that silence, a dreadful truth whispered in his mind. History's deadliest invention was not only powerful, it was unstoppable. It was waiting to be used again. The soldier's breath came in shallow gasps. His ears still rang, but another sound began to seep through the silence. A low hum, faint at first, like the whisper of machinery far below the earth. The ground trembled again, not from the blast, but from something stirring beneath the ruins. He froze. The air grew hotter, pressing against his skin like a furnace. Smoke curled upward, carrying with it the acrid stench of burning metal. The soldier's vision blurred as tears welled in his eyes. Through the haze, he saw it. A crater, massive, blackened, glowing faintly at the edges. Inside, the soil seemed to pulse, as though alive. The weapon had not only destroyed, it had awakened something. The soldier staggered back, his boots scraping against the cracked earth. His heart thundered, louder than the hum beneath him. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the valley, carrying whispers, broken, indistinguishable voices. They clawed at his mind, heavy with grief, heavy with rage. His hands shook as he covered his ears, but the voices pushed deeper. And then he understood. The deadliest invention in history was not just a tool of war. It was a seed that thrived on ruin. The blast had fed it. The silence had nurtured it. And now, it was growing. The soldier stumbled backward, but the crater seemed to pull him closer. Each step away felt heavier, as though the earth itself dragged at his legs. The glow inside the pit grew brighter. Shadows writhed against the walls, stretching like skeletal fingers. The voices rose in unison, no longer whispers but a chorus of anguish. He clenched his jaw, his teeth grinding under the weight of the sound. His vision swam, his mind clouded, yet one thought cut through the storm. This was not the end of the weapon. This was only its beginning. A cold shiver crawled down his spine as he realized the truth. The deadliest invention was not forged simply to kill. It was designed to linger, to outlive every survivor, to crawl into the future, carried by fire, smoke, and silence. He dropped to his knees, his palms pressing against the scorched ground. The soil was hot, too hot, burning his skin. And beneath it, he felt a pulse. Slow, steady, alive. His breath caught. The weapon had not just taken lives. It had given birth to something else, something waiting to rise. The soldier tore his hands away, skin blistered and raw. He stumbled back, his breath ragged, but the ground pulsed harder, like the heartbeat of a buried giant. The glow inside the crater flared, casting jagged beams of light across the ruined valley. The voices sharpened, no longer cries of sorrow, but commands. Commands that clawed at his mind, urging him to kneel, to surrender. His heart raced. He gritted his teeth, but his body felt weaker with every passing second. The invention was not only fire and steel. It was influence. It reached into the bones of men and twisted their will. The soldier pressed his forehead to the ground, sweat dripping into the dust. Every fiber of his body screamed for him to resist, but the pull was relentless. The silence of death had become a language, and the weapon spoke it fluently. He lifted his head, trembling, as a shadow formed within the crater. Not flesh, not machine, something born from both. It rose slowly, draped in smoke and embers, its shape shifting, unfinished, yet terrible to behold. The soldier's breath caught in his throat. He understood at last. The deadliest invention in history was not the weapon itself. It was what the weapon awakened. The figure inside the crater swayed as though caught between worlds. Its outline burned and dissolved, then burned again. Eyes, if they could be called eyes, flared like molten metal, piercing through the smoke. The soldier froze, his chest tightening as if invisible hands pressed against his ribs. Each breath came shorter, sharper, like knives sliding into his lungs. The voices grew louder, splitting into countless tones. Men, women, children, all crying, all demanding, all inside his skull. He clutched his head, screaming, but his voice vanished beneath theirs. The shadow leaned forward, and the earth cracked under its weight. Heat rolled out in waves, blistering the air, warping the ruins into shifting mirages. The soldier's boots melted into the ground, his legs sinking slightly into the soft, scorched earth. Terror surged through him, but so did an unfamiliar emotion. Obedience. He realized the invention was not built to destroy cities. It was built to enslave what remained, to turn survivors into vessels. His vision dimmed at the edges, blackness crawling inward like a closing curtain. The shadow stretched higher, its arms unfurling into the smoke-filled sky. And with a voice that was all voices, it spoke a single word. His name. The soldier rose slowly, but his movements were no longer his own. His head tilted, eyes glowing faintly with the same molten fire that pulsed in the crater. The voices had fallen silent inside him. Now they spoke through him. Every word echoed like thunder rolling across empty skies. The ruins around him began to stir. Shattered metal twisted, fusing into strange shapes. Burned trees straightened, their branches splitting into jagged, unnatural forms. The valley itself seemed to obey, reshaping under the will of the weapon. The soldier's body trembled, but his face remained expressionless. He walked with steady steps toward the ridge, where the world beyond waited. The wind carried ash into his hair, the taste of iron thick on his tongue. He did not notice. He no longer felt hunger, or fear, or pain. The invention had hollowed him, leaving only a vessel. And through that vessel, it could spread, far from the crater, far beyond the battlefield, across cities, across nations. The soldier's boots crunched over the last edge of the valley. In the distance, he saw faint lights of survivors, clinging to hope in the ruins of a shattered world. A flicker of something, perhaps his last thought, tried to surface. A warning, a plea, but it drowned instantly in the heartbeat of the weapon. He smiled without meaning to. The spread had already begun. The soldier moved toward the scattered glow of firelight in the distance. The faint hum within his chest guided him, steady as a compass pointing toward life, toward prey. The camp of survivors huddled among broken walls and shattered vehicles, unaware of what approached. Children whispered softly. Mothers clutched them close, their eyes darting at every crack of stone. The air still smelled of ash, but here there was hope. fragile, flickering, desperate. The soldier stepped into the light. At first, they gasped in relief. A survivor. Well, their own. But then they saw his eyes, the fire behind them, the emptiness inside them. Fear spread like a current, rippling through the camp. A man stepped forward, lifting a rusted rifle with shaking hands. "Stay back," he said, his voice breaking. The soldier obeyed, but not by stopping, by commanding the rifle itself. Metal bent with a groan, the barrel twisting into a spiral before it snapped apart in the man's grip. The survivors cried out, stumbling back, but the soldier only raised his hand. The ground beneath the camp cracked open. Smoke and heat erupted, swallowing their cries. One by one, their voices joined the chorus inside him. The weapon fed again, and it grew stronger. The soldier turned his head, his hollow smile fixed. The valley was only the beginning. Now the world itself was the battlefield. News of the ruined valley spread quickly. Scouts who fled the chaos spoke of fire that moved like water, and a man who walked untouched through the inferno. Leaders dismissed it as fear and rumor. But then entire towns began to vanish. First their voices went silent, then their lights. When soldiers were sent to investigate, they never returned. Only echoes did. Machines warped into grotesque shapes, carrying the same faint hum inside their frames. Nations turned to their weapons, their last shields of power. Jets roared across blackened skies. Tanks rolled over scorched soil. But every strike, every blast, only fed the heartbeat beneath the earth. The invention thrived on defiance. It grew louder, stronger, hungrier. The soldier, no longer a man, no longer even a vessel, had become its herald. Where he walked, cities bent, steel bent, souls bent. The world began to fracture, not only in land, but in will. And in the deepest chambers of power, leaders whispered a truth they dared not speak aloud. The invention was not an enemy to defeat. It was a shadow to survive. But shadows, once born, do not fade. They spread. The soldier marched through the husks of cities, his shadow stretching across broken glass and fallen towers. The hum inside him had grown into a roar, a pulse that shook windows and made the ground tremble. Yet somewhere beneath that endless thunder, a faint whisper stirred. His own voice. Buried. Faint, but alive. He caught glimpses, faces of comrades long gone, memories of laughter before the fire, the sound of his mother's lullaby. Fragments of the man he had been. They flickered like candlelight against the storm. He tried to hold them, but each time, the heartbeat of the weapon smothered them in silence. Still, something resisted. When he looked into the terrified eyes of survivors, a pang of recognition pierced the fog. He remembered fear. He remembered mercy. For a moment, his hand trembled instead of striking. The weapon reacted violently, searing through his chest with unbearable heat. The chorus inside him screamed, demanding obedience. His body staggered, caught between two wills, his own and the invention's. The ground split again, fire tearing open the street beneath his feet. He fell to one knee, clutching his skull, his scream echoing across the ruins. And for the first time since the blast, the weapon faltered. The fire beneath him dimmed for a heartbeat. The roar inside his chest cracked, breaking into static. The soldier gasped, dragging air into lungs that felt scorched from within. For a moment, he was himself again. He saw the city, not as fuel for the invention, but as a graveyard of lives. Faces of the dead stared back at him from the shadows of shattered walls. Their eyes begged him to resist. He clenched his fists, driving his nails deep into blistered skin, anchoring himself in pain. The weapon fought back. Heat surged through his veins, turning his blood into fire. The voices returned, shrieking, demanding, threatening. "You are nothing without me," they thundered. But his own voice answered, hoarse and breaking. "I'm not yours." The ground shuddered violently, splitting towers in two. A wave of smoke rolled outward, as if the invention itself recoiled. For the first time, the shadow inside the crater trembled. Its form flickered, unstable, as if his defiance weakened its hold. The soldier pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the duel of two heartbeats. One was his, one was not. If he chose wrong, the world would end in silence. If he chose right, he might end with it. The soldier fell forward onto his hands, ash searing his palms. Every muscle in his body shook as the two heartbeats collided inside his chest. One steady, human. One monstrous, unyielding. The voices screamed louder, 1,000 tongues lashing his mind with commands. But beneath their fury, he heard another sound. Soft, fragile, a memory. The sound of his mother humming a lullaby, the same tune she sang to quiet storms outside their window. It pierced the noise, a thread of humanity that the invention could not corrupt. The soldier gritted his teeth, forcing his body upright. "I am still here," he whispered. The molten fire in his veins thrashed violently, trying to drown him. The shadow above the crater convulsed, its form unraveling into smoke and sparks. Cracks split across its body of light, spilling blinding beams into the sky. The invention was faltering. For the first time, it feared him. The ground quaked, buildings toppling into clouds of dust. The soldier roared, his voice no longer just his own, but stronger, layered with the echoes of every life the invention had stolen. They rose through him, no longer prisoners, but allies. Together, they pushed back against the endless hum, and the valley trembled as the weapon screamed. The scream of the weapon split the sky, a sound so sharp it cracked windows miles away. Flames surged upward from the crater, but they no longer spread with hunger. They recoiled, thrashing wildly like a beast cornered. The soldier staggered forward, his body still torn between two heartbeats. His veins glowed beneath his skin, flickers of molten light threatening to burst through. Every step felt like walking through knives, but he pressed on. The voices inside him writhed in panic, their commands breaking into fragments. Obey, submit, belong. But others, softer voices, rose against them. The lost, the silenced, the ones who had been claimed. They spoke through him now, their strength pouring into his faltering body. He stretched out his hand toward the shadow, fingers trembling, scorched skin peeling. The shape inside the crater roared, its fractured form collapsing into shards of smoke and light. It lashed out, a torrent of fire sweeping across the ruins. The soldier stood his ground. The flames washed over him, burning everything they touched, except him. He screamed once more, and the fire shattered like glass, scattering into the wind. The shadow convulsed, shrinking, folding inward, its massive frame collapsing into a single, glowing core at the heart of the crater. The soldier fell to his knees, staring at it. The deadliest invention in history had been reduced to one fragile spark. But the spark still pulsed, alive, waiting, and he knew, if he struck it, the cost would be everything. The soldier's breath came ragged, each inhale scraping like glass through his throat. The glow of the core pulsed in rhythm with his heart, almost gentle, almost inviting. For a moment, there was no fire, no voices, no ruin. Only silence. And in that silence, the weapon spoke, not in screams, but in whispers. It promised him strength. It promised an end to pain. It promised that through him, the world would never fall again, because there would be nothing left to fall. His hands shook. The heat radiating from the core was unbearable, yet it drew him closer. The lost voices that had stood with him now wavered, their strength fading like smoke. He clenched his fists, nails biting into his blistered palms. One choice meant sacrifice, the other meant surrender. His reflection glimmered faintly in the surface of the core, eyes hollow, skin cracked, body broken. But behind that reflection, another face flickered. Not his, the shadow. It was waiting for his decision. The soldier screamed, the sound tearing from his lungs with all the fury left in him. He raised his hand high, trembling, torn between crushing the core or clutching it as his own. The valley held its breath. His hand hovered above the core, every muscle quivering with indecision. The whispers grew louder, curling around his thoughts like smoke. Take it, they said. In it all, be more than human. His chest burned with each word, the second heartbeat pounding harder, faster, trying to merge with his own. The lost voices inside him cried out, begging him to finish it, to end the cycle. Tears welled in his eyes, cutting lines through the ash on his face. For one breathless moment, he imagined the world free of war. But in that vision, it was not free. It was empty, silent, dead. His hand clenched into a fist. The core flared, as if sensing his rejection. It pulsed violently, waves of heat blistering the air. The shadow's face flickered once more on its surface, lips curling into a silent snarl. The soldier roared, driving his fist down with all the strength he had left. The impact split the ground, a shockwave ripping through the valley. The core cracked, spilling light so blinding it erased every shadow. The voices screamed, shredding the air, before collapsing into silence. Real silence. The soldier collapsed, his chest heaving, his body broken, but his mind his own. The glow of the core dimmed, its final pulse fading into dust. The deadliest invention in history was gone. Or so it seemed. In the wind that carried the ash away, a faint hum lingered, barely heard, but alive. The soldier lay motionless, his body scorched and trembling. His breaths were shallow, each one a battle against the weight pressing on his chest. For the first time since the blast, the air was quiet. No whispers, no commands, only the fragile sound of wind moving through broken stone. He closed his eyes, certain it was over. But the silence was not complete. Beneath it, faint and steady, the hum persisted. It did not come from the shattered core. It came from the earth itself. Deep, hidden, endless. The soldier forced his head to turn, his vision blurred with blood and ash. The cracks in the ground glowed faintly, thin veins of light pulsing like buried arteries. The invention had not died. It had only sunk deeper, waiting, feeding. The soldier's lips parted, a whisper escaping, more breath than voice. Not finished. His body gave way, collapsing into the dust, his hand still stretched toward the dying glow. Above him, the sky rumbled, not with thunder, but with something older, something listening. And somewhere, far beyond the ruined valley, people lifted their heads in unease. They heard it too, the hum, spreading. Across the ruined valley, silence lingered like a fragile shell. But far from the crater, in distant towns that had never seen the blast, people stirred in the night. At first it was nothing, a faint vibration in the floorboards, a quiver in a glass of water, a low hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. Children woke, crying, clutching their ears. Dogs howled at empty streets. Machines sputtered and flickered, their engines pulsing in strange rhythm. No one could explain it. No one could stop it. Scientists leaned over instruments, watching needles twitch to an invisible heartbeat. The signal was faint, but it spread without end, through soil, through water, through air. Governments sent messages in panic, but even their radios carried the same undertone. The hum. Always the hum. And in the ashes of the valley, the soldier's body twitched. His eyes remained closed, his breath shallow, but his chest rose with an unfamiliar rhythm. Not his own. The second heartbeat had returned, weaker, but alive. And through him, the invention began again. The soldier's body lay in the dust, broken, yet not still. Each breath rattled like a rusted hinge, shallow and jagged. The hum inside him grew louder, sinking with the faint glow beneath the earth. His fingers twitched. His lips moved soundlessly, as though repeating words whispered only to him. He was no longer fully alive, but not fully gone. Far away, in cities untouched by fire, the hum seeped into daily life. Streetlights flickered in perfect rhythm. Engines stalled, their pistons locking to the same pulse. People awoke in the night with nosebleeds, their dreams filled with voices they could not remember. Doctors recorded hearts beating faster, slower, then, in unison. Across continents, strangers collapsed at the same second, their bodies convulsing to the unseen rhythm. Fear turned to panic. Panic turned to silence. Governments demanded answers. Scientists whispered that the hum was not a signal. It was a spread. The invention was no longer in one place. It was everywhere. And at the center of the ruined valley, the soldier's eyes opened. Glowing. Empty. The vessel had returned. The soldier rose slowly, dust sliding from his charred uniform. Every joint cracked, as though his bones no longer fit his body. The hum rattled through his chest, spilling into the air around him. Pebbles on the ground quivered. Shattered glass rang with a faint, constant vibration. He looked at his own hands, skin burned, fingers trembling, yet they pulsed with light from within. Not human light. Something older. Something endless. He took a step forward. The ground answered. Cracks spread beneath his boots, glowing veins stretching outward like roots. For miles, the earth shook. In distant towns, alarms wailed. Lights died. Children screamed as shadows writhed on their walls, bending in unnatural rhythm to the hum. Governments scrambled, sending orders that no one could carry out. Soldiers deserted. Machines refused command. The invention no longer needed bombs or fire. It had found its voice in every pulse, every engine, every heart. The soldier lifted his head to the sky. His mouth opened, but it was not his voice that spoke. It was all voices at once, men, women, children, crying out in perfect unison. The sound rolled across the horizon, reaching every ear, every mind. A single word carried on it. Begin. The word rippled through the air like a shock wave. Glass shattered in towers hundreds of miles away. Birds fell from the sky, their wings frozen mid-flight. Oceans trembled, waves rising without wind. The hum no longer hid beneath the earth. It sang openly now, weaving itself into every sound, every breath. In crowded streets, people clutched their chests as their hearts fell into rhythm with it. Some screamed, some laughed, some stood motionless, eyes vacant, lips whispering the same word. Begin. The soldier's body straightened, his burned skin glowing brighter with every step. His eyes reflected no humanity, only the endless light of the invention. He walked, and the ground itself bent to carry him forward. Cities lit up ahead, their skylines trembling under the weight of the unseen pulse. And far beneath the earth, deep within the veins of stone and metal, the invention stretched further. It was no longer a weapon. It was a rhythm, a law, a new order. The soldier raised his hand, and across the world, millions of hands rose with him. Not by choice, by command. The silence of death had passed. The silence of obedience had begun to in every corner of the world. People froze mid-motion. Drivers abandoned cars in the middle of highways. Workers dropped their tools in silent factories. Children stood in playgrounds, their eyes blank, their hands lifted skyward. The hum bound them all, weaving humanity into a single, pulsing rhythm. Governments fell into chaos. Leaders shouted orders to resist, but their guards, their advisors, even their families moved in unison with the command. Parliaments and war rooms fell silent, heads turning slowly toward the unseen voice. The soldier walked through the ruins, unaware of distance or time. With each step, more joined the rhythm. Millions, then billions. Their voices rose as one, a vast chorus echoing across continents. Begin. The world's machines answered too. Engines revved without fuel. Screens flickered to life, broadcasting only static in perfect rhythm with a hum. Towers of steel bent and groaned, shaping themselves into unfamiliar forms. The invention was no longer spreading. It was building, using humanity as its hands. And at the center of it all, the soldier felt the last fragment of himself smother beneath the tide. No memories remained. No mercy. Only purpose. The deadliest invention in history had found its true design. Not destruction. Transformation. Across cities, forests, deserts, and seas, humanity moved as one. Hands carved, lifted, and built, guided by a will that was not their own. Mountains were split open. Bridges of steel rose from oceans. Towers stretched skyward, their shapes unnatural, bending like twisted spires of bone and metal. Every stone set, every beam forged, every voice silent, save for the hum. The invention was constructing something vast, something no single mind could comprehend. From orbit, satellites captured images of the Earth reshaping itself. Lines of glowing structures spread across continents, converging toward a single design. A symbol burned into the planet itself. The soldier stood at the heart of it, his body radiating with unbearable light. His veins glowed like rivers of fire, his eyes twin suns in the shadow of the ruins. He was no longer a man, but the living core of the network. Through him, the invention pulsed outward, binding every soul, every stone, every machine. And as the final piece slid into place, the hum deepened. It was no longer a rhythm. It was a voice. It spoke through every mouth at once, billions of tongues moving in perfect harmony. This world is prepared. The sky itself seemed to darken in response. Clouds split, stars flickered, and far beyond Earth, something vast stirred in the void, answering the call. The hum reached its peak, resonating through oceans, mountains, and bone. Every heartbeat on Earth fell into silence, pausing, as if the world itself held its breath. The colossal design etched across continents glowed, a beacon so bright it pierced the heavens. And from the void the answer came. Not a ship, not a creature, but an echo, older than stars, deeper than time. It was the origin of the invention, the hand that had left it here, waiting. Humanity had not created history's deadliest invention. They had only awakened it. The soldier, once a man, now a vessel, lifted his head to the dark sky, his body blazing with unbearable light. And in that moment, the truth became clear. The invention was never meant to destroy the world. It was meant to prepare it. For what came next? The beacon dimmed, the hum faded, and the Earth, forever changed, stood silent under the gaze of the stars. History's deadliest invention had done its work, and its story was only the beginning.